We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H.
All right, we got this from Anonymous. I don't know who this is because it says Anonymous. That's what it says.
It is.
Anonymous has been a fan of JTR speakers, specifically their Triple 12s, which sound a lot like three 12-inch drivers.
Well, what those were, it's a discontinued model now. They're not making it anymore. But it was three 12-inch drivers, but the middle one had the tweeter embedded in the middle of it, so it's coaxial.
Eesh.
So you had a coaxial tweeter in the middle of a 12-inch driver and then two other 12-inch drivers.
Yeah. What this guy or gal likes most about them is that they produce a gigantic wall of sound, and everything just sounds real, like you're right there in it. Whatever I said that weird is because there's quotes around it. Sometimes people ask why he wants speakers that play so loud, but for him it's not about loud, it's about realism. So as much as he likes the Triple 12s, they're a bit too big and a bit too expensive for his current setup. But he really, really wants the same sort of performance.
Fair enough.
Fine. Can he be certain that JTR smaller models will deliver the same sense of realism as the Triple 12s? Nope. You can't. I'm sorry, you can't. You can't be sure that they will deliver the same sort of performance. I have never heard the Triple 12s or anything from JTR that I can think of. I may have, but just have forgotten because I've heard a lot of speakers. But most manufacturers try, not all, but most try to have a similar sound signature throughout their entire lines so that you are not buying one speaker, having one experience, buying a second speaker going, what? What is that?
This sounds like a completely different brand altogether.
Yes.
That's not their goal.
That's generally
usually
not their goal. Now, will they deliver the same sense of realism as the Triple 12s? I don't know, man. I have no clue.
But given that the point is he's in this smaller room that, physically it's not big enough to put the Triple 12s
I would assume that the reason they made the smaller speakers is for your exact situation.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that they would be going for the same thing.
Yeah, so like a great example is their current, what they call their single 8, right? Which, as the name implies, is a single 8 with a coaxial tweeter. The same tweeter, the same coaxial compression-loaded tweeter, but in the middle of a single 8-inch driver. That would be a great example of something that has a very similar design, just shrunken down. So it won't play as loud. It will not play as loud as those Triple 12s. But you don't need it to play as loud because you're in a room that isn't even big enough to hold the Triple 12s. So that would be a good choice, I think.
Wow. JTR makes the world's slowest to load website in the history of websites.
Oh, they have said that they will be updating that homepage for, it's got to be at least 3 years now.
I know I've been to this website now that I've seen because I've seen the things I've clicked on in the past. I think I just clicked on a bunch of stuff trying to get any of it to load. So I'm still waiting right now. It still hasn't loaded. This is ridiculous. I feel like AOL is sending me this website. Do they host it on AOL? Anyways.
They must. I looked it up earlier, so they must be doing something right now.
Right. So what exactly is in the Triple 12's design that yields the sense of realism that he loves so much? Is it the tweeter design, the coaxial compression? Is it having multiple large woofers? If he's shopping for other brands, just due to size or price or whatever, he wants to know what to look for. Dude, I am having a really hard time with this question, I have to be honest with you, because it's a very unique design, that's for sure. And I don't know that many speaker designers that I know of would employ this design because they would not think that mating a 12-inch driver to essentially act as a mid-range with a tweeter would be a necessarily good idea. But for whatever reason, it's working for you. So I would have to say that it must be this putting together of the compression, coaxial compression driver in the center of the larger woofer. I don't know why you're liking them so much. I can't imagine that this would. I just put it this way: if someone came to me with this design, I would say that's not necessarily the best idea I ever heard. You should probably do something else.
Well, I mean, it's turning your mid woofer into a horn. That's really what it's doing.
I understand.
Yeah, and there's benefits to that. The benefit of that is that in the region where the tweeter crosses over to that mid woofer, because the tweeter is coaxial located right in the middle of that woofer, they're going to have the same dispersion. You're not going to have the tweeter with a wider dispersion versus this larger woofer. You're going to have the same dispersion at that critical range where they're crossing over to one another. And everything that, Floyd Toole, Vance Dickinson, Sean Olive, all these other, speaker engineers and speaker designers, they almost all agree that's a good thing. It's a good thing when the dispersion between the treble and the mid-range and not so much the bass because that becomes omnidirectional, but the dispersion between the treble and the mid-range is the same. That is basically universally agreed upon as being a good thing. And this design sort of accomplishes that while giving you a design that can play really, really loud. So when you say the thing that impresses you most isn't the super loudness, it's realism, to me, what creates realism is a lack of distortion. And distortion takes many different forms, right? But distortion just means here's what the signal said to do, right? Here's the recording. It said, play this note for this long, this loud. That's harder to do than it sounds, right? That sounds like a simple set of things to do, but it's hard to actually achieve that in a speaker. When you have very low distortion, things start to sound real. And I define real as I close my eyes and I am convinced that I'm not listening to a speaker. I'm convinced that I'm listening to a real person or a real instrument or a real whatever, rather than most speakers, you close your eyes, you're like, yeah, that's clearly being played by a speaker. That's not a real person standing in my room talking to me. That's a reproduction of a person coming through a speaker. To me, that's the definition of realism. So I've described like the speakers I'm using right now, the Ascend Acoustics Sierra RAL speakers that use a ribbon tweeter. To me, they reach that uncanny level of realism. Not all the time, because it depends on the recording. But for the recordings where that's something that can be done, it achieves that. It's like, yeah, that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up sometimes because it's almost eerie how real it can sound. They don't play as loud as these JTRs. They're not nearly as efficient as these JTRs, but they can still create that sense of realism where I'm fooled into thinking it's a real live person in my room. Right?
I would love to see this speaker so I knew what the heck I'm talking about here. It's a tweeter in the middle of a 12-inch driver, or there is a...
That's the triple 12s, yeah.
So there is not a mid-range at all.
That is the mid-range. And then there's two other 12-inch
How is that thing not
above and
distorting
below.
as it's trying to play those higher notes? How is that 12-inch driver not distorting?
Because that compression tweeter can play down to 800 hertz.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude.
It's almost all about that tweeter. Like that tweeter design is probably what's giving you the magic that you're hearing. It's probably mostly that tweeter design because that's the thing that's able to produce sound with low enough distortion that it's the distortion that makes our brain go, that's not a real thing.
Yeah.
Something is off about that. Sometimes it's so subtle that you can't
you might
consciously be aware of it.
Okay, we have to get to the next question.
Yeah.
He's looked at other high efficiency brands like Klipsch and Tecton, for examples, and they don't necessarily sound as real as the JTR Triple 12s to him.
Sure.
So strictly just high sensitivity doesn't seem to be enough. Are there books or websites that can point him to that will help him understand what creates realism in speaker performance? The book, what is the Loudspeaker Cookbook or something like that?
Design Cookbook. That's right.
That's like the Bible.
That's Vance Dickinson.
Yeah.
Whose name I mentioned, but yeah, the Loudspeaker Design Cookbook. Over at Parts Express, they actually have a section of several speaker design books. But that is sort of the standard that most people read is the Loudspeaker Design Cookbook.
I would also recommend, because he's tried other high efficiency ones, thinking that's that. I don't think that's what your problem is here, dude. I already mentioned the Jensen electrostatic bookshelf speakers, the A1.2s. Probably would be something that would be in your wheelhouse, as something that you would really like. I think that would be something that you would like. It would not play nearly as loud, okay? But you're saying loud is not the deal. Realism is the deal. The other thing is the Aperion tweeter is also well regarded as being able to play very low, and that allows it to cross over into the mid-range in a way that limits distortion quite a bit. So I would I would take a look at the Period Audio as well. Yes, it's completely different designs. They do have a coaxial one out there. I don't know which one it is. It's one of their
those Fortes. Those
the
Fortes use a
Fortes,
coaxial.
yeah. But I don't think you necessarily have to look at this coaxial design as being something that you're like, okay, well, it looks the same, therefore it's going to sound the same. Because that tweeter that's inside yours is completely different than just about all the other tweeters that are out there. So what you're trying to do is find a tweeter or tweeter design that acts similarly to the one that you're hearing. So a Period Audio, if you've got the money, talk to Jensen and electrostatic speakers, or just electrostatic speakers in general. So Martin Logan's, those sorts of things might be something that might be up your alley as well. I don't know if they're going to be cheaper than what you're looking at right now.
And the ones that I mentioned from a center are a ribbon speaker, which is another way of producing those frequencies with really low distortion.
Yeah.
Right. Anytime you have something that's vibrating the air, but it barely has to move, that helps, right? Because the more the thing has to move,
it just opened. Just in case you're wondering, that's how long it took.
Yes.
For this thing to open, it took that long. I would have bought 5 other speakers by the time this thing opened.
The more the thing has to move, the greater the chances are that it's going to distort in some way while it's doing all this excursion, right? If something barely has to move, earlier in this podcast we were talking about folded ribbon tweeters, which is another way of having a whole bunch of surface area that barely has to move. And that all helps to lower distortion. So when you say, what is it that creates realism? It's having really low distortion. And there's multiple ways to achieve that goal.
I don't see the Triple 12 on here at all.
But I said it's discontinued.
Oh, okay.
It's not on their site anymore.
Whoa, whatever. Okay.
But yeah, JTR did it in one particular way. They used a compression-loaded tweeter. That is something that, because of the design where the opening of the hole is actually smaller in front of this tweeter, so it forces the air to come out and sort of shoot out of there the way that blowing through a smaller opening would. So that's one way of doing it, so that the tweeter has to move less while getting loud.
These are some seriously ugly speakers. Wait, am I looking at the wrong ones?
They're like pro speakers. They're meant for like big venues. That's one of the reasons why they went with that design.
I'm trying to find something. I'm clicking on the residential stuff, but everything looks like a subwoofer. Like every single one.
All the things at the top are. The speakers start at the bottom of that list and go up.
Of the residential?
Yep.
I just clicked on something way at the bottom, and it looks like a stupid... This one doesn't even have a picture.
They're all big black boxes with big drivers in them, man. That's what JTR makes.
There's a tweeter in this thing?
If it's one of the
No,
eights.
it's another subwoofer. This is a subwoofer manufacturer.
Oh, they do make subs. They make the Captivator, that's, and the Orbit Shifter.
Oh, here's one. This one looks like an actual thing. It's got 2...
They have ones with horn-loaded tweeters.
That's what I'm looking
yeah.
at. Mm-hmm. Man, dude, that's some ugly-ass speakers. No offense. Okay. Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.